Will the new Saudi law help migrant domestic workers? Why it is in the news? Saudi Arabia, a major global employer of migrant domestic workers, MDWS, is set to implement a new domestic workers law. The six GCC states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain, collectively employ nearly 5.5 million MDWS, migrant domestic workers. However, all six countries exclude MDWS from their general labor laws, with only four having enacted specific legislation for domestic workers. An overview of migrant workers in Saudi Arabia. As of first quarter 2024, Saudi Arabia has host 3.91 million migrant domestic workers comprising 27.32 lakh males and 11.81 lakh females, which constitute 25% of the total workforce. The exclusion of MDWS from labor laws creates significant protection gaps as critical monitoring mechanisms such as labor inspection and the wages protection system do not apply to this sector. These vulnerabilities are exacerbated by the kafala system, where the employer tied visa arrangement leaves lower income migrant workers at the mercy of their sponsors, effectively outsourcing immigration control to individuals. Current and upcoming MDW laws. The upcoming MDW laws fall short in addressing existing protection gaps. Female MDWS in particular suffer extreme abuse both from employers and officials when seeking remedies. Despite regulations, Saudi Arabia's justice mechanism failed to adequately protect MDWS. Additionally, the country lacks a minimum wage, with wages often determined by bilateral agreements. Overworked MDWS migrant domestic workers receive poor pay without clear overtime calculations. Categories of migrant domestic workers. Migrant domestic workers in Saudi Arabia work in 14 different jobs categories like house helpers, drivers, caregivers, chefs, and even specialized positions such as physiotherapists. The most extensive category, servant and house cleaners, involves more than 2 million employees, with almost 60% of being women. Male domestic workers, especially drivers, make up nearly 70% of the industry in Saudi Arabia, showing cultural expectation and household needs. The kafala system and its implications. The kafala system, combined with exclusion from labor laws, gives employers absolute control over MDWS, often leading to bonded labor conditions. Recruitment costs, excluding wages, range between $2,000 and $5,000, fostering a perception among employers that they have bought the worker. The Mushanid system, which regulates MDW recruitment and employment, tends to favor employers, further entrenching these issues. Features of the new MDW laws: a maximum of 10 working hours per day, weekly off days, prohibition of identity document confiscation, workers' right to communication, conditions for contract termination without losing entitlements, compensation for unjust termination, 1 month of paid leave annually, employer paid annual ticket home. Additionally, Saudi Arabia introduced mandatory insurance on a new MDW contracts and included migrant domestic workers in the WPS from July 2024, with plans to cover all existing MDWS by the end of 2025. Concerns regarding the new law. Saudi Arabia has a poor track record in implementing protection for migrant workers, with widespread wage theft and labor exploitation. Female migrant domestic workers remain vulnerable, particularly due to the risk of being reported as absconding if they leave their employer's household without permission. Despite reforms to the absconding regime, the law can still be weaponized by the abusive employers. Limited labor inspections, communication barriers, and language issue hinder both the assessment of reform impacts and the reporting of violation by workers. Status of the Indian migrant domestic workers MDWS. Indians marking 26.5 lakh of the migrant population in Saudi Arabia are significantly represented in the domestic work sector. The recruitments of Indian MDWS must be through emigrate system with a minimum referral wage set at SAR 1,500, that is 33,400 rupees. Special provisions include minimum age of 30 for the female MDWS and $2,500 financial bank guarantee. However, consular support for distressed worker is often limited to repatriation with little assistance provided for access to justice or securing entitlement before deportation. The embassy in Riyadh and the consulate in Jeddah are under resourced to meet these needs effectively.